My stay-at-home mom wife decided to adopt our kids out so we can become newlyweds again. Am I hallucinating or is it happening IRL? Using a throwaway because I'm pretty active in some other subs and don't want this associated with my main account. My wife and I have been together since college and got married a little while after she graduated. When we first got together, she told me she didn't really like kids, and while I was a little disappointed, I didn't care too much about it. I didn't feel very strongly about it either way. We were very in love and things were perfect for a good while. Her birth control failed 6 years ago, and I told her that I would support whatever choice she made. She scheduled an abortion, but backed out the day before, and we became loving and enthusiastic parents. Later on, down the road, she decided she wanted another child, and so we had our second daughter. They are 5 and 3 years old, and absolutely perfect. They are both very well behaved and ahead of the curve for kids their ages. Another thing that's worth mentioning, my wife is a som. My job is very demanding, and I am out of town for week-long stretches at a time once a month, and then 9 to 6 the rest of the month. I've had this schedule since we were married, basically. I make good money, in the low 6 figures, and we've never had any kind of financial struggles. For the past few months, I've known something was up with my wife. She is obviously the primary caretaker of our daughters, but recently she's been completely hands-off when I'm at home. I don't mind spending the extra time with my daughters taking care of them, but it's more than that. She will completely ignore them while I'm around. If they ask her for anything at all, she tells them, "Go ask Daddy," and will go into our bedroom and lock the door to get away from them. I've been asking her if she's alright, and she had been insisting everything was fine until last night. After we put the kids to bed, she came to me and sat me down at the table. She started talking about fun things we had done right after we got married, what a great adventure everything had been, just generally reminiscing. She was sweet and funny and loving, and my guard was down. She said, back before we had the girls, we could do anything we wanted. I wish we could go back to that. I asked her what she meant. After much prodding, she admitted that she regretted having kids. I said that there were times where I felt overwhelmed too, but that I would always love our daughters. She got quiet. She mumbled something and I asked her to say it again. She yelled, "I don't love them," and then started sobbing that I sat there with my mouth hanging open. She composed herself and then started talking again. She was saying how she had been looking into adoption agencies and foster care. She had contacted one agency already. She was making plans to give away my children. I continued to listen, too dumbfounded to say a word, as she babbled on about how amazing it's going to be to have our lives back, how great our relationship will be when we don't have kids anymore. That I didn't know what to do. I let her talk herself out, and when she went to bed I went and got my babies, packed some things, and drove to my mother's house. I called in sick to work today. I told them I'd probably be out the rest of the week, that I have a ton of missed calls, voicemails, and texts from my wife. I haven't looked at any of them. I've spent the day talking to my mom about things and keeping the girls occupied. My mom doesn't know what to do either. I'm thinking I have a couple of options: start calling lawyers or start calling mental health professionals. Maybe both. I don't know if she's having some kind of psychotic delusion or if she's just that awful of a person. I really don't want to go back home to her now. Ever. I'm thinking divorce is the best choice, but I can't take care of my kids on my own. What should my next move be? Should I try to call my wife? Edit. Additional info. She's not at home all the time with them. They go to pre-K for 6 hours a day 4 days a week. My mom takes them pretty much every other weekend. She gets a lot of time to herself, even though it could be more, and on nights when I'm home she goes out with her friends often, and lately when I'm home she doesn't see the kids at all. It's still possible that she's overwhelmed, but she's not the isolated, barefoot and pregnant, chained to the stove woman you're picturing here. We've both always been pretty low libido. I would say we have sex once a week and we try to have a date night every other week, leaving the girls with my mother. We are very affectionate towards one another. She graduated with an art degree. When we first got married, she was working as a teacher. She taught English and art in a local high school. She hated it, and she quit when she was pregnant with our first. She has a studio in our house, basically an extra bedroom with all her art stuff in it that the kids aren't allowed in, and she paints when the kids are out of the house. She feels like her degree is useless but told me she wasn't interested in going back to school, that we used to pay for a weekly maid service, but my wife decided she didn't want to spare the expense, that I'm just looking for input right now. Honestly, I feel like her response to this situation was completely out of line and nearly unbelievable, and I'm not sure I want to continue a relationship with someone who considers giving away her kids before even asking for help. She has consistently denied that anything was wrong and apparently put up a front to make me think that she wasn't struggling. Additional info. It's not like I forced her to have kids. She chose not to have an abortion, and she herself chose to have a second child. She approached me about it. She was so happy when I said yes, let's do it. She never asked for any help. She didn't let on that things weren't perfect until the last few months, when I repeatedly asked her if things were okay. She bottled up her feelings until she was ready to give up our kids and was making real plans about it behind my back. Everybody's acting like I'm the bad guy here for working long hours, but it's not that simple. Whatever direction things take, I absolutely will be hiring a nanny. Update 1. I second-guessed myself a little after the initial responses I was getting from my first post. I didn't expect anybody to side with my wife. I should have given more information from the start, but I didn't realize all that stuff would be relevant. I thought that from the fact that she was trying to adopt out our kids without my knowledge, people would realize that the issue was with her. I'm not trying to say I'm perfect by any means, but I took a lot of unwarranted criticism. Anyway, after I elaborated on our situation a little more, I got a ton of helpful advice and support. Thank you to everyone who commented or sent me a PM. I took a lot of the advice to heart. This update is going to be long. A lot of really crazy things has happened that I'm in the process of finding a live-in nanny now, and I appreciate everyone who suggested it. Yesterday I contacted a lawyer for advice, and then bit the bullet and called my wife. One of my close friends lives a few houses down, so I explained the situation and had him on standby. I left my daughters with my mom and came back to the house to meet with her. She was absolutely furious. The first words out of her mouth were, "Where the hell have you been, you piece of?" When I got to the house, she berated me for leaving without saying a word to her or answering the phone. She accused me of cheating on her, called me a pig and a bastard, and ranted for a good 15 minutes straight. She didn't say a word about the kids. Didn't ask me where they were, or if I had taken them. It's like she had forgotten they existed, that I cut her off, told her where I had been and that I had taken the girls to my mother's house. She seemed caught off guard. She asked me why. I explained to her that the way she had talked about adopting them out was not acceptable, and since she didn't care about them, I didn't think they were safe around her. She blinked and said, word for word, "Wait, you want to keep them? Don't you love me?" I lost it. I'm not proud of it, but I couldn't hold it together. Reddit. It devolved into a screaming fight with me telling her she was insane and her yelling that I didn't love her. I went through the house and packed up all my valuables and personal documents with her screaming her head off at me the whole time. My friend came in to try and calm her down, but she threw a plate at him and told him to get out. At this point I called the cops. She dug her hole deeper by punching one of the cops, and then biting the other once she was cuffed. I am now 100% certain that she's having some kind of psychotic break. She will be evaluated soon, but either way I'm going through with a divorce. I doubt I'll have any trouble getting full custody, especially with that call to the adoption agency on her phone records. After my wife was arrested, I cleaned up the house and brought my daughters back home. They haven't asked where mommy is yet, but I don't know what to tell them when they do. I'm looking into taking a lower responsibility role at work, at least to where I'm not gone for a whole week at a time. I will still be heavily reliant on a nanny, but I can't stand the thought of my daughters not having a parent there to put them to bed every night. Edit. Growing up, my father was a schizophrenic. I'm not interested in putting my daughters through what I went through. Even if she gets treatment, it will be a constant worry for me. If she had cancer, or some other illness, it wouldn't affect her love for our daughters. I wouldn't have to worry that she would murder them or abandon them or hurt them when I wasn't around. That's the difference. Edit 2. I called my mom and she said she told my daughters that their mommy had to go on a trip for a little while. That's why they haven't asked about her so far. Update 2. It's been a good while since my last update, but things are progressing, so I figured I'd post something. My wife has been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. She is undergoing extensive therapy and trying to work out her legal issues as well. I'm still not sure what direction that is going to take. My wife's parents have been helping her with legal arrangements as she refuses help from me, and didn't even want to use my insurance to help with her medical bills. She ended up having to anyway, and I've been sending her parents money to help with paying what's left over. We mutually decided to go ahead with the divorce. She didn't want custody of our daughters, or even visitation. I practically begged her to at least come to their birthdays and holidays, but she said no. I'm hoping that it's a symptom of her illness and that once she progresses through her treatment enough she will change her mind, but I'm not going to hold my breath. I found a wonderful au pair who is fantastic with my daughters. According to her, they're very self-sufficient and don't need much help with keeping themselves entertained or anything really. I suspect my wife had been ignoring the girls even when I wasn't around. They've been constantly asking me when mommy is coming back and I don't know what to tell them. I have to try really hard not to cry in front of them because I don't want them to worry about me. We've been going to family therapy together but still haven't found a way to explain that mommy might never come back, or she may show back up and not be nice, or she may show back up and be her old self again. My friend, the one she threw a plate at, and his wife and kids have been hanging out at my place a lot to keep us all company. He's been a godsend throughout this whole experience. He decided not to press charges against my wife for the plate thing. This will probably be my last update. The feedback I've gotten from you guys has really helped to ground me during these events. Even just getting validation that I'm not crazy helped. Thanks for everything, Reddit. Want to hear the next story? Story 2. I, 34M, found my wife, 33F, in our bed with another man. They were so into it they didn't notice me standing there at the door recording them with my phone. A little background, for the sake of my sanity, I will refer to wife as Ellie. My best friend's name is Omar. Ellie and I met in college and hit it off right away. When we started dating, I was not really assertive. You could accurately say that it was her showing interest and desire in me that made me really begin to value myself and work past a ton of insecurities I used to deal with. I was just a hardworking, nerdy smart dude, but had never had any real luck with women. To me it was almost incredible that someone as smart and beautiful as her would show as much interest in me as I showed in her. We both have always been driven, which led to us separately building small businesses of our own by the time we graduated college. We moved in together after graduation and a year later married. We had, what I considered, a very strong marriage. We had weathered family tragedies, professional challenges, small and large disagreements, and always managed to work through everything, and I felt it always made us stronger. Ellie has always had a huge social circle that included a fair number of men, but I never thought too much about it as she never did anything that raised flags, since all social outings seemed to always be as a large mixed group and I came to trust her closest friends. As our 10-year anniversary was coming up, I decided to bring up the topic of starting a family. Early on in the relationship we had together decided to compromise on the size of our family. I wanted kids, she wanted none or at most one, so we agreed on having one. Now 10 years into our marriage, secure economically and thinking how healthy I thought our relationship was, I brought the topic up. I can't help but think me doing this may have started this whole chain of events that a little over 3 months ago she told me she is going out with her friends to have some fun. She basically told me she needed to unwind as she was getting stressed about me asking about having kids again. That night she comes back at 4 a.m., starting with that day our bedroom goes completely dead. In our relationship Ellie has always initiated as much as me, in fact on average I would say more often than me, and for rare periods when we were dealing with traveling, I can't think of us ever going more than 5 days without some form of intimacy. She starts going out more, guarding her phone, avoiding me, all this stuff I had never seen from her before. After about 3 to 4 weeks of this I talk to Omar, my best friend, and he points me to Reddit, and I start reading. Eventually I decided I need to do something about this as it's beginning to put me in a bad mood. I don't just want to trust her, I like to trust my wife, I need to trust her. Well, needless to say I get my hands on her phone and check her calls and texts, feeling like a complete monster violating her privacy. Turns out that one of the people new to her social circle is an old high school flame from before we were together. The more I dug, the more I found. I think the fact I'd always trusted her completely made her complacent about hiding the affair better. I found out that during that party a month before he had attended, and they spent all night, catching up, and ended up kissing, not even really hiding it from her whole group of friends and then conveniently going to the bathroom at the same time. Up to this point all I had felt has been this giant pit of anxiety in my stomach, a part of me trying to hold on to the image of the woman I thought I had married, a kind of self-delusion. But the anger and sadness started getting overwhelming, made worse by the fact that she seemed oblivious to my sudden indifference. She didn't notice I had stopped making romantic gestures. I felt like I was breaking inside. Finally, a month ago I decided to catch them in the act, and I tell Ellie I am going to visit my cousin for the weekend. He lives 3 hours away, but instead I go stay with Omar, who has been helping me record and copy everything. I waited, and sure enough, she brought him to our house, to our bed. I snuck into the house and made my way to our room, and the sounds left no doubts. They were so into it they didn't notice me standing there at the door recording them with my phone. I literally felt something in me break, like something in my soul snapped so hard I could hear it. My veins went ice cold and something like a 10-ton anvil had been dropped on my chest. I couldn't breathe. I went numb. This next part one can only tell you what Omar says happened because I only remember parts of the next few minutes. According to Omar, who I had brought as a witness, apparently, I walked up to them, pulled the guy off the bed, and Omar pulled me off of him. I remember Omar holding me down on the ground. After that there was the normal hysterics of being caught. I went no contact for 5 weeks and began working with a lawyer preparing for the worse. Omar served as her contact point during that time since I simply didn't want to talk with her. Ellie contacted my family and told them that we are having problems. After the 5 weeks of no contacts, we met and talked. She was remorseful, told me it wasn't my fault, that it was all her doing, her responsibility and her decisions. We decided to go to marriage counseling and at least explore if there is anything salvageable. Sitting here I can't believe that even after that, I still love her. I am disgusted with myself that I have thought about her well-being, about her happiness. I especially hate that now I have to question our entire relationship. Was it just now that she got brazen about cheating, or has it happened before and I didn't bother looking far enough, or was too stupidly trusting to see it at all? It's been now almost a month since deciding to try marriage counseling, and my questions to those who have already gone through this are the following. 1. Is it possible to reconcile without feeling that you lose some self-respect? 2. How long does the anger to sadness to numbness, rinse and repeat cycle last? I'm getting exhausted of the constant emotional roller coaster. 3. I find myself really loathing the whole idea of having to essentially be on the constant lookout. Is that a sign of me wanting out or just me being exhausted? Because I honestly can't tell. I'll take any advice, honestly. I love her, I've been head over heels for her since we met back in college. I want to work it out. Is it actually possible, and if it is, will it ever resemble what it used to be even remotely? Update. Hello everyone, I posted on Friday, and I am glad I did, as the kind people of this subreddit were brutally honest and helped confirm for me many of the things I had been thinking and the direction I should go. This may get long, so please excuse my ramblings. After reading everyone's replies and the messages, I took the weekend to let it all sink in and hardened my resolve. I came to the conclusion that I was never going to be able to live with myself if I stayed with her. Staying and working on it would mean having to sacrifice a significant portion of my self-respect. I also realized that I want no part of a relationship that would require me to be in a state of constant vigilance for signs of betrayal. So, I decided to push the proverbial red button and nuke it all. Here is how it all went down. Monday, I woke up early to an unexpected surprise. When I opened my eyes, my Johnson was greeting me at full attention. Guys, I can't stress how surprising that was to me, considering that since finding out about Ellie's affair I had not had morning wood. It was like my body was saying, hell yeah, we are going to get this done today and be done, ready for something new. I actually laughed so hard at seeing it that Omar and his wife came to check in on me, thinking I was having some sort of mental breakdown, that I got up, got ready and called Ellie's dad and told him we needed to talk. I met up with him about an hour before our counseling. The whole drive there I was surprised at how calm I was about it. I could still feel an ocean of emotions somewhere deep down, but on the surface, I was not feeling anything. We met up at a little mom and pop breakfast place near his house and we sat down. Ellie's dad is a good man, light-hearted and funny, but more importantly he is level-headed. I thanked him for how he and his wife had treated me all these years and told him I was sorry to have this talk with him. He listened patiently, but as I started telling him why I was going to be divorcing his daughter he lowered his head. I could tell he was ashamed and angry, not at me, but at Ellie. He told me he understood, and I asked him not to tell Ellie as I was going to be telling her within the hour. He agreed, we shook hands, and then he told me to take care. I hated having to shatter his image of her. I debated with myself if I should have asked him to care for her, but I shouted down that instinct because, he is her dad, of course he will care for her, but also it is no longer my business to care for her, she is a big girl. Next, I went to our scheduled counseling session. I had been rehearsing all day Sunday what I would say to her and how I would say it. I wanted to essentially emotion-proof my actions and words for the next few hours. I sat there in the parking lot for 10 minutes and just prayed. I hadn't felt like I wanted to or could since all this started. When we sat down to counsel, Ellie was wearing one of the dresses I loved her in, and for a split second I forgot everything, but then the visceral disgust and anger I felt pushed the attraction completely out. I let the counselor get things going like our previous sessions, and after about 10 minutes of her and Ellie talking, I interrupted. This is how it went. Excuse me, I have a few things I need to say and to Ellie and that I wanted to be able to say here, with a neutral third party. If at any point, I am interrupted I will simply leave and that's that. Ellie, I have come to realize I do not need to know if this was the only time you cheated. It doesn't matter. I do not need to know how long it went on for. It doesn't matter. I do not need to know how many times you cheated. It doesn't matter. I do not need to know why. Even if there was a good reason, a perfect why, it also would not matter. The only thing that matters is that you did. I know now the only facts that matter. You were never going to have children with me. At this, Ellie opens her mouth to interject and I started walking to the door, so she immediately backed off. You were going to string me along for however long it would take. You were going to cheat on me sooner or later. This is when the waterworks started to open up for her. You do not respect me or love me. The counselor begins to look like she is about to interject, and I respond by taking another step towards the door, which ends that. My lawyer is filing for divorce as we sit here, and as of about an hour ago your father knows the entire truth of what has been going on. Do not contact me. From here on out the only person we will communicate through our lawyers. These are the last words we will ever exchange. Goodbye. I walked the last few steps to the door and walked out. As soon as I closed the door, I heard a wail the likes of which would haunt people's dreams. She scrambled out of the office pursuing me and tried to stop me, telling me how sorry she is and how we can start a family and to give her a second chance as she cried hysterically throughout. I pushed past her and got in my car and left. At this point that ocean of emotions that had been quietly hiding underneath it all started roiling and I was barely holding it in. I drove to my parents' house and sent the text message I had planned to Ellie's best friend's husbands. When I got home my old man was at the store, but Mom could tell I wasn't well. She has always been able to read me like a book. I told her I needed to tell her and Dad something important and we sat down and waited. At this point I must thank one fellow Redditor for messaging me. We chatted and he totally calmed me down. About 30 minutes later Dad arrived. I poured it all out. The more I talked the more I felt that ocean of emotions emptying and all that pain pouring out of me. When I finished talking to my dad, he just held me as I cried into his shirt for a solid 20 minutes. When it all ended, I felt spent and oddly at peace that I have arranged for Omar to receive a Harley he has been eyeing for a while. He has been more than a friend to me, and I am going to try my best to be as good a friend to him as he has been to me. I can't wait to see his face. I think this is the last time I will post, as it should be the end of this story. I just want to thank you all. Would have never thought that I would find sound and sane advice from strangers on the internet. I know that it will be a long road ahead, that I will still need IC to deal with the aftershocks of this debacle and rebuild my ability to trust. I have to hope that little by little all this pain and sadness and anger will go away, like a roto-rooter for my soul if I do the work. Now begins the rest of my life and I can honestly say I am looking forward to it.